34 Fox 1 on our screen, and this looks like a whole defensive playbook page. You want to explain this a little bit, and then we can maybe get into it?
Right. So just like the offense, anytime you hear a defensive play, it's got different elements. Unlike the offense, it's a lot simpler. So whereas the offense is trying to execute concepts to move the football or score, defense is simply just reacting to those concepts. They're making checks and calls to stop the offense from executing. So here we're looking at what's called 34 Fox 1. So 34, you can see the three down defensive linemen, the four linebackers, a 3-4. 34 is that alignment. Fox tells you that, or tells us looking at the play, that they call that Fox is when both outside linebackers blitz. You see that on the edge there. And one tells you the coverage behind it. They're calling it one being a cover one. Now, what cover one means in common football lexicon is one single high safety. When I say single high, he's in the middle of the field. He's deep. He's got the middle of the field all kind of by himself. He's kind of the center fielder, the classic Ed Reed, Earl Thomas type. That's his role in any kind of cover one defense.
Have to
So that's
stop
kind
you
of
there,
what you see
Nick.
here.
Can't compare those two in the same sentence.
Well, I mean, how about Earl Thomas when he was with Seattle? Well, I'll go that way.
Okay.
I forgot he played for the Ravens and got
Sore subject
demolished.
in Baltimore.
Yeah. Yeah, but yeah, so you look at this play, and this is a variant. Just like there's different variants with offensive schemes, there's variants with defensive schemes. So, for example, this is a cover one with a Fox split. So they're rushing five guys, which forces them to play man on man across the board with one deep safety. So the whole point of this defense here is they're trying to isolate pass rushers and get pressure on the quarterback so that way their defensive backs don't have to cover for very long. There's other variants of cover one that you'll see sometimes. You'll hear cover one robber is sometimes a phrase you'll hear on TV, where you have one deep safety, he's got the deep zone, and one safety who's closer to the line of scrimmage, covering kind of the middle of the field. Those are all concepts that, basically every defense uses and runs with this kind of coverage that you see a lot of times on Sundays.
So I have some basic questions here for you, Nick.
Yep, sure.
First off, I see we have two corners playing, looks like some press man, and they're on their own on the outsides of the play. That's pretty self-explanatory. Now, these safeties back here, this is a little bit more tricky to dissect for the common man, but I'll give it my best. This free safety, I can tell that it looks like these safeties are lined up in what would be like a cover two at first, but this free safety is going to fall back into the middle field, like you said, into that cover one. And is this strong safety going to pretend to blitz but cover the Y receiver?
So you're exactly right. They start up in the two deep safety look, and to back up a little bit, a big part of what defense is trying to do is just confuse the picture for the quarterback. So Peyton Manning actually talked about it on the Manning cast earlier this week, where when quarterbacks get to a line of scrimmage, after they identify the front, if it's three down linemen or four, they identify the linebackers. That helps with protections. Then they look at the safeties, and they see two safeties deep. That tells you a certain kind of coverage package. If you see one safety deep, that tells you another kind of coverage package. If you see no safeties deep, obviously it's an all-out blitz. That's a whole nother different kind of coverage package. Now here in this alignment, what the play is telling the defense is start in a two deep safety look. And you see those little squiggly lines next to the free safety and strong safety there?
Yeah, what does that mean?
So that means try and time it up with the cadence and kind of walk that direction at the snap. Because you see the strong safety's man on man with the tight end, but he is really deep. I mean, he's like 12, 15 yards off the ball in his original position there. So a smart quarterback or a quick route to the tight end here could be an easy 10, 15 yards, like a quick out or something like that. So they line up in this two deep look, and then into the cadence, that strong safety starts walking up to get closer and closer to that tight end because he's got him in man-on-man coverage. And that free safety starts walking more to the middle of the field. That's why a lot of quarterbacks will try and hurry up to the line of scrimmage, and they'll go like a fake count to see the defense adjust like they would to kind of tell the real picture. Because a lot of defenses, basically every defense now, never just lines up and plays. They always try and do some kind of disguise because quarterbacks are really, really smart and really well coached for the most part, that they're able to figure out what defensive schemes teams will be in if they line up and are stationary and the best way to attack them.
That reminds me of, like, famously the Bill Belichick Patriots versus Rams Super Bowl, where some defenders came out and said after the fact that every play they had two defensive call. They would line up in one, wait until the mic and the helmet cut off so McVay couldn't talk to Goff, and then switch to the other defense to give a different look to confuse Goff, who was obviously he still doesn't know what's going on, but he didn't know what was going on, and that's how they dominated them so well.
Yeah, so a big part of defense is just making it hard for the offense. And what I mean by that is not making reads easy, to not just know, okay, this guy's uncovered, free release, I'll just hit him real quick. Or, hey, I've got an all pro receivers man on man. I don't see any safety over the top. He's going to be open. I'm going to throw to him right away. So, for example, here, you've got both corners are on islands, right? Man on man. Well, if you're playing a good passing team, if you lined up with just one safety in the middle of the field and what's, they call it a single high look, a good quarterback would look at that and say, oh, I want to get my receivers one-on-one deep, whichever one is the best matchup, maybe even both of them. But, the Ravens are a good example right there. You see Hollywood Brown one-on-one with no safety over the top, that's where you're going right away. But they line up in that two deep safety look. So when the quarterback comes to the line of scrimmage, he immediately says, okay, that's not really there. I can't look there. When in reality, the defense they're actually playing, it is there. So that's kind of the head games and strategy that goes on to defense. That's a little bit different than how the offense has to operate.
So, in my opinion, from all these things you've been saying, what I've gathered is it seems like it's a little bit easier for the offense to go out and execute their game plan. The defense really has to put some spice on it to a more, if in my opinion from all of this, it should be more impressive to see a well executed defense than it should be a well executed offense. There's more room for error, and it's a lot harder to call the perfect plays on defense, it seems.
Yeah, there's always an offense that can beat a defense. Right. There is no perfect defense. There is no coverage or scheme that'll cover every offensive play. It just doesn't happen. There are holes in every scheme. For example, in this cover one look, all the wide receivers are in man on man. So a deep route down the sidelines, they're playing press, maybe a fade, or they get, they run like a slant route and they beat the corner off the ball. Or the running back is a good receiving running back and he beats the linebackers in man on man or whatever, right? There's a lot of weaknesses there in the defense. The whole point of the defense is to do just enough to confuse and deter the offense and mainly the quarterback to identifying the weakness and executing against it long enough for the pass rushers to get home. That's basically the whole goal of any defense, is say, we're going to cover everybody for 3 seconds, or we're going to make it confusing for 3 seconds. And then by then, if our pass rushers are there, we'll win. If they're not, we'll lose. And they just live with that. That's all they can do. They can't try and cover everything because you just can't, especially in today's NFL.
I wish you would have explained this to me a little bit better in college. I probably would have beat you at Madden a little bit more if I would have known what was going on.
Yeah, Madden's a little bit different, but yeah, I couldn't tell you too much because even when you beat me, I'd have to throw the controller a few times. The few times you did beat me, so I didn't have money for spare controllers, so for the ability for me to keep playing, I had to not divulge too many of these secrets.
Well, you have any more on this one, or should we move to the next set?
Let's move on to the next play. Let's show that one.
Next up, we have the cover two that we briefly mentioned.
Yeah, so cover two is, cover one was the one deep safety. Cover two, following that logic, is 2 deep safeties. So the whole scheme of the cover two is the corners stay up to the line of scrimmage to cover the flats. And by the flats, that's the area near the sidelines, closer to the line of scrimmage, about 10 yards in. And the 2 safeties split, each of them have half the field deep. And the whole point of this coverage is to eliminate the big play. So think about it like this. A lot of offenses are looking for one-on-one opportunities for their big play receivers down the field. The Chiefs are a fantastic example. What cover two allows defenses to do, specifically corners, it allows them to beat up the receivers at line of scrimmage and then let them go. Let them beat them deep because they know their help is 20 yards behind. At the snap, right, the defense already has 2 defenders, each safety in the middle of the field, who is already 20 yards ahead of the offense and preventing the big play. And that gives a huge advantage, obviously, to stopping those big plays down the sideline. Now, there are some holes in cover two. The big one, right, if the safety is split, if they have the 2 and they have to split the middle of the field, comes wide open. So that's that middle linebacker. He's got to get depth. You see him with the arrow, it says middle read. He's got to get depth, and he's reading. He's looking for anybody attacking that middle of the field. And then you have the two linebackers, or sometimes defensive backs. They've got the hook curl, is what they call that. And their whole point is to just look for crossing routes from those wide receivers or hook routes from either tight ends or those wide receivers. So basically, the whole point here is for those corners to pass off the receivers either deep to the safeties or to those hook curl routes in the middle. The whole point of this defense is just to make things take a long time so your pass rushers get home. Eventually, you'll find holes, right? Eventually, your receiver, if he's running a crossing route, will pass the corner. He'll get past the corner. He'll get past the first hook curl zone, and then he'll be open over the middle of the field. Or you have a tight end that's going to eventually work around and find a hole on the opposite side of the field, or you have a receiver that's able to work a deep post down the middle and find a gap there, or get deep up the sideline. Eventually the holes will be there, but it just takes a long time for it to develop. Cover 2 is designed to take a long time, make it look really ugly for the offense out the gate, right? Because if you look at the defense, they essentially have 5 short zones or 5 zones 10 yards and in right at the snap. That doesn't leave a lot of room for quick passes and quick reads, and they also have the 2 safeties deep, so the quarterbacks can't look for a quick shot. It takes a long developing time, and it just makes the picture really clear, really cloudy for the quarterback. So a lot of times if they get some pressure, quarterback just wants a quick check down just to get 5 or 6 yards.
It seems like you said, they're vulnerable in the middle, but also you're still always going to be vulnerable because a good receiver on a linebacker, that's kind of a mismatch in coverage. The linebacker's probably not as fast as a receiver. But then it seems like even when that middle linebacker, if there's like some sort of delayed route, if that middle linebacker clears out, there may be some openings right in the middle of the field, like in that slant range, something like that. I guess just high and low, middle of the field is where you'd try to attack a cover 2?
Yeah, so definitely you're going after the middle of the field. There's basically 2 ways to attack a cover 2. Is the first concept, you kind of hit on it. It's kind of a levels concept. And when you have a receiver at the same position horizontally, so in this case, middle of the field, at different levels. So let's say you have one receiver who's running a deep post. You have one receiver running like a 12-yard in cut, and you have one receiver running a short little drag route, shallow cross. And basically what you do is you force that middle linebacker to take, one of those 2 crossing routes, either the drag or the deep end, and you see whichever one he takes, you throw to the other guy, and you look long to short. You also have the deep post to make sure those safeties honor that deep post. If the safeties let him go and thinking that middle linebacker is going to get deep enough, you hit there first. So that's, again, Peyton Manning talked about it. You look touchdown to check down. You work deep and progress long. So the first thing in that situation, you look for the deep post. Hey, the safety didn't screw the pooch. He honored the deep post. Okay, did that middle linebacker get deep enough to take the deep in route? Okay, he did. All right, immediately hit the 5-yard cross, let the guy run after catch. The second way to beat this is they call it flooding the zone. So the good thing about cover 2 is you've got deep guys that are already in position. The bad thing is there's a lot of ground to cover. So one of the ways you can beat it is if you have 2 receivers on the same side of the field, both go deep. And the way you can do that is you can have one receiver run a post route and one receiver run a corner route. And basically you just force the deep safety to pick one or the other. And whichever one he picks, you go the other way. And so that kind of, by flooding the zone, by putting more players in the zone than there are players that defender can cover, you open up a lot of opportunities offensively.
You get a little bit more favorable matchup one-on-one with your receiver. You hope he can win that matchup.
Right, because remember, the thing about, even though it's a zone coverage, it eventually becomes man-on-man the moment someone comes into your zone. So basically, with 2 deep receivers, one running a post, one running a corner, you force that safety. He's got to pick one of them to cover and go man-on-man, and you just go the other guy. And that's how you can get a lot of big plays out of it. Now, the one caveat is, right, that's a long developing play. So if you can get a decent pass rush, you can kind of eliminate that. And again, that's what the whole point of these zone coverages are, is to cover it long enough to get some sort of a pass rush.
Now, this is the last thing on this that I have, but there's these 2 plays. They look relatively similar, except for the offenses, but the defenses look relatively similar. Except for one key difference. It's kind of glaring. It's sticking out of the screen, screaming to you. Do you know, what does this scat mean? the yellow box that says scat. Do you have any clue on that one, or is that
So
just
that's
some
just
terminology?
Yeah, so that's just a call the corner will make. So you can see on that one, there is no wide receiver to that side. So that corner is moving closer into the line of scrimmage. And I don't know exactly what the scat call is, but I think the scat call is telling the safety behind him, hey, I'm moving in because there's no one that wide. So it's just letting everybody know, hey, I'm not going to be as far out as I used to be. I'm going to be right here, closer to the line of scrimmage. Because remember, if that corner sits really far outside covering nobody, what good is he? There's no point in covering grass. You'll hear that from coaches all the time. Don't cover grass. So there's no one out wide on his side. So he moves in. He still has that short, flat responsibility, but because he's moved in and displaced a little bit, he makes a scat call to let everyone around him know.
Perfect. All right. Now, going up by the numbers, we go cover 1, we go cover 2. Let's check out some cover 3. This is a Seattle play, the Deuce Stone Boston. A lot of words, a lot of stuff going on. Seattle, famous for cover 3. What do we got here?
So cover 3 is basically cover 1, right? You still have the same deep safety, but instead of that safety in cover 1 having to just be the center fielder only, and that's kind of responsibility, in cover 3, he's still the center fielder, but he also knows the corners to the outside, to his left and right, have responsibility for their deep third. So remember, cover 2, you basically broke up the deep half of the field into halves, right? Each safety had one half, cover 2. Here you break up the deep part of the field into 3 pieces. So the corner, the other corner, and the free safety each have a third. So what essentially is, it's cover 1. Remember how that was man on man? Cover 3 is very, very similar, except the corners will hand off to the safeties and vice versa, their man on man responsibilities once their receiver leaves their third. So for example, if you run like a deep post or something like that, the corner will stay with him until that receiver clears it and goes to the safety. So remember how I talked about a post corner concept with one player running a post, one player running a corner against cover 2? Cover 3 beats that because the corner covering the post would hand the post off to the safety and he'd switch to the corner. So it's just a different concept designed to handle that. The other part about cover 3, which is big, and you see it there, is it brings the strong safety up into the box, gives that force in the middle of the field to take off those short crossing routes and things like that. It also allows them to better support the running game.
So this defense seems, like I said earlier, very difficult to execute. It seems very player-based. And let's go back to the Legion of Boom, Seattle. You had 2 strong corners who were able to go that deep third by themselves and be able to handle that. Richard Sherman, I believe Byron Maxwell was the other corner. Or I think that's who it was. But
Brandon Browner.
Brandon Browner.
Mm-hmm.
And then they were able to handle themselves on that third. Earl Thomas was able to handle his third, and then someone like Cam Chancellor would step up in the box, more linebacker-esque safety. So if you don't have 2 lockdown corners or serviceable, decent corners and a good safety, this seems like a really difficult kind of defense to execute.
Yeah, it can be, and that's the way it is with almost any defense, right? Cover 1, when those corners were strictly man on man, that's also another challenge because you're by yourself on an island. And cover 3, you're not so much by yourself, but you have to be able to react very, very quickly. You have to be a good tackler, which obviously Richard Sherman and Brandon Browner were. You have to have some size on you, because you're going to be playing a lot of jump balls and fades, which both of them did, which worked out very well. So a lot of it is personnel driven, but there are also different techniques and different ways of playing it that go into factor here too. One of the things that cover 3 does a lot of that was trying to prevent is that for a long time, when people started running the cover 2 more beginning in the early 2000s, the middle of the field was open. We talked about level concepts and we talked about flooding the zone. Cover 3 eliminates a lot of the flooding the zone, and it puts another guy in the middle of the field, right? So instead of having one person in the middle of the field, you have 2 linebackers, and you have that strong safety and the other linebacker covering the flat and the buzz coverage, as it's called here. So that's cover 3 is sort of a way to beat teams that figured out cover 2. So defenses always kind of react to offenses. That's kind of how the game ebbs and flows. And the Legion of Boom and cover 3 basically came into prominence because teams were finding a lot of success against a lot of 2 deep coverage.
And this just seems like a really good if you have two strong corners who can cover their third, that whole middle of the field is gone. Like you don't want to throw the ball there. It has about 50 guys right there able to jump any route. So it seems like a very effective defense to run.
It is, but it got ran out of fashion very quickly. And the reason it did, and it started with that Super Bowl against the Patriots, where we all remember the Malcolm Butler interception. But what really beat them up was Tom Brady just dinking and dunking. Because one of the things about this defense is that there's a lot of holes to the outside because that those corners have to bail pretty quickly. And those two buzz routes, they start in the middle of the field. Remember how cover two, how the flats, the corners were already there?
No
And
one's
cover
in the flat.
the cover three, that they're starting much closer to the middle of the field. So it's a lot open for quick outs, quick flares to running back, quick curls and stop routes to the receivers. Those are all open. So for a guy that can recognize and execute, Brady and a lot of the veteran guys, Rodgers, they found a lot of ways to beat this coverage very, very quickly. And unless you have superior talent like Seattle, it's a hard one to play because once teams figure it out, it's really easy to move the ball.
Would like something like a halfback screen or wide receiver screen be like effective against a defense like this?
Yeah. So anything where a screen is great when the defensive backs are bailing. So a screen isn't as good against cover two because you already have a guy in the flat, right? But against cover three, because both corners are flying and they're bailing, it's a pretty good play there because it just creates a natural space.
All right.
Remember how we talked about clear outs last week on offense?
Yes.
So the cover three actually creates the clear out for them, right? Because the corner has to bail.
So you immediately, the clear out was the concept where the arrow, the go route would clear out for
The branch.
the branch route.
Right. Cover three basically clears it out for you in a lot of ways.
Gotcha. So a branch bow might be an effective play to run against a cover
It is
three.
extremely effective play.
Now we're putting the pieces together.
Yeah, it's all coming together.
All right. You ready to get a little bit more complicated?
Let's do it. Let's get a little wacky with it.
We got 1, 2, 3. We can't cover them all. There's a million defenses. So let's go from 4 to 6.
So cover six, right? Cover six is a combination of cover two and cover four. Again, coaches aren't super creative. They call the combination, they just added them together to get six. Basically, what six is designed to do is you want to play a cover two style defense. You're not a cover three team, but you understand teams are flooding the zone down the field and you can't get to the quarterback and you want to stop it. So basically what you do is for the side of the field that is the strength of the offense, usually the slot receiver or bunch receivers, the corner will bail and you'll have a safety. They'll each take a quarter of the field or half of that half. And their whole game plan there is to stop from flooding the zone, stop the post corner combinations that I talked about before. That's the whole point there. Again, the flat is wide open. They surrender that part of cover two on that side. They're just trying to prevent the big plays and flooding the zone to that side of the field. On the opposite side of the field, they're running strictly cover two. So they've got the corner in the flat, jamming the receiver, and that other safety's getting deep. He has that entire half the field to himself.
So on the plays we have right here, let's look at the I trio. So what you're saying is that on this left side of the screen, where we have the strong safety and the X receiver, this side of the field is cover two because there's only one receiver to this side, so the corner's going to cover him man on man, and this strong safety will take that entire half of the field because there's not as much going, and this linebacker here, the Sam, is going to drop into the middle for like that hook.
So
route.
The corner doesn't have a man on man. He's got the flat. He's got the short pass.
So it's exactly like cover two.
It is exactly like cover two. Now, remember, it'll look just like man on man until the receiver gets about 15 yards downfield, up the sideline or over the middle of the field. But it is not directly man on man coverage from that corner on that coverage.
Now, on the opposite side of the field, since we have the Y and the Z receivers over here, they have now cut this side of the field into quarters. So it goes from a half into two quarters, and the corner is gonna be one-on-one with the Z receiver, and the free safety is going to have that quarter of the field. If the wide receiver or anyone else comes on his quarter of the field, they're all going to. So it's like one half of the field's doing one thing, and the other half of the field is doing something completely different.
Correct. That's exactly the point. Again, the whole concept is right. Maybe the offense comes up to the line of scrimmage and they see those two deep safeties and like, all right, cover two. This is perfect. We'll flood the deep guy. We'll put two guys on that deep safety and we'll get a big play. When in reality, the defense is actually bailing that corner and they've already got that safety deep for his own quarter. So that opens up the defense to prevent that from happening. And once again, the whole point of the defense is to put, cloud the quarterback and introduce doubt. So the quarterback's like, okay, I'm going to flood the zone. I'm going to get a big play here. He reads the two high look at the snap. He looks up and he realizes instead of being one safety that he's attacking, he sees a safety in a corner. And his first, crap. Now he's got some doubt. He's got some confusion. It's a lot to process very quickly, so does he hit the check down? Does he look for his alternate read? And remember, he's got cover two on the other side. So he tries to look on the other side. Maybe that's a hook, or maybe that's a bomb or a fade. But that's well covered by the cover two combination. And at that point, he's got to hit the check down or he's sacked or he's got to throw it away. So again, the whole point is just to introduce doubt. It's just to be a counter to the offense from getting any rhythm and timing based on how they looked.
So what offensive scheme or play call would be effective against this cover six looks? What's your ideal?
So again, if you treat it like a cover two, it's actually very, very beatable. And the way you can do that is use that wide receiver and that X receiver and still execute like a levels concept. One of them runs a short crossing route. One of them runs a deeper turn in. And you can look at that middle linebacker and say, okay, whatever one he takes, I'm just going to throw it to the other guy. That's one way you can do it. The other way you can do it is treat it like a cover three and attack the boundary in the sideline. Because remember, that corner is bailing on the cover six side. There's no one in the flat or curl. So you hit the check down, you hit the running back, maybe you hit a quick out or something like that. That's how you can beat it. But remember, you call this defense if you're a defense because you are cover two, you're playing a lot of cover two, and they're attacking you deep with multiple wide receivers on one of your sides of cover two. So this is a counter to an offense who's getting a lot of opportunities down the field against the cover two. So the offense isn't thinking to go short. It's thinking to flood the deep zone. And again, by the time they realize that it's not there, they don't have, you can't change the play mid play. And by the time the play is over, hey, you don't know when they're going to go back to cover six. So you could run one of those combinations I talked about before. Maybe you run like a short quick out, but now you're running it right into cover two if they go back to cover two. And that's a recipe for disaster. So again, it's that chess match. It's that back and forth between the offense and the defense.
Interesting. Very interesting. Any more that you have on this cover six concept?
No, I think we covered it pretty good. And again, I think the big thing you always want to think about, defensively is making it hard for the offense. Don't make it easy, right? And you see some of these here, even though it may be a cover six or cover two or cover three or whatever, you will see some situations where it actually becomes a man-on-man coverage for one of the guys on one of the receivers. The reason being they don't want to give a free release to a guy and give him an easy 20 yards or something like that. So even though the coverage may be a cover two concept, you may find a situation where a defender against a certain formation or motion, immediately becomes man. He like switches to man. And sometimes you see calls like that that'll be made at the line of scrimmage that defenders will communicate to say, hey, everyone else is cover two, but I've got that guy man on man, for whatever reason.